What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and so abortion's kind of a hot topic again these days, mostly due to the leak of the Supreme Court, I guess, draft of a vote or something like that. Essentially, some leak from the Supreme Court saying that they, at least as of the moment, would end up overturning Roe v. Wade were the decision presented in front of them, which I think it's supposed to be presented in front of them sometime in the near future. So there's that, and then I guess there was also, like, kind of secondarily a recent vote in the Senate related to abortion, and I won't talk too much about that because that's sort of secondary, and I don't know too much of the details of that. But I thought I would just kind of explain my thoughts on the issue, especially as it pertains to overturning Roe v. Wade. So the general summary, I'll give you the general summary first, and then kind of dig deeper into the details. So, in general, I don't think abortion is a good moral decision in most possible cases. However, I do realize that there need to be some allowances and exceptions. Also, I do not think, at the moment, if ever, that overturning Roe v. Wade is the right move. And there are a lot of Christians that it would seem would disagree with me on that. But let me dig into the details that explain my thoughts there. So first off, let me explain why I think abortion is morally bad in general. So, as a Christian, I do not agree with the general concept of abortion because essentially it is ending an innocent, defenseless, if left alone, human life. And I do think, though, I need to clarify some details on what I would consider an abortion and what I would not. And this level of nuance, I think, is where we are extremely lacking in the discussion, especially from Christians. At least Christians on the internet. So, thing is, as simply as I can explain it, where I would draw the line at what is and is not an abortion, would there be a reasonably healthy human child born at the end of the pregnancy? If yes, and you're deciding to terminate that early, I call that an abortion. If the child would not be born alive and reasonably healthy, especially the alive part, if the child is going to be stillborn, then I don't think that's really an abortion then. I don't think it should be classified as an abortion to end that pregnancy early if it is known that the child would not be born alive. Or, like, if it would be born technically alive for a little bit, but, like, it doesn't have any lungs and therefore would suffocate to death within minutes. No, I don't think that should be considered an abortion. Now, I will admit, even with my own definition of abortion, there might be some reasonable medical exceptions, such as fetus never actually makes it all the way to the womb and is, say, stuck in the fallopian tubes, for example. That would be completely detrimental, if not deadly, probably deadly, to the mother. And because of when that would be deadly to the mother, it would also inherently be deadly to the fetus. Therefore, like, that's a reasonable exception. Get the fetus out of there and at least save the mother. If there is any situation in which you are having to choose between the life of the fetus and the life of the mother, I think that is a reasonable exception, even by my definition of abortion, as I've stated it. So, and I also, like, there's, whether or not you agree with this on a moral standpoint, like, I can kind of take the emotional consideration and whatnot, you know, as a strong factor in cases of, let's just be blunt here, rape. Like, if a woman is raped, there's so much more going on in that case. That, look, I mean, if the mother still ends up wanting to have the child, then by all means, I am all for that. I understand there could possibly be a massive emotional toll there. But if the mother wants to go through with it, then sure. Again, choosing not to bring an early end to what would otherwise be a viable human life, sure. Good. That's fine by me. But I could also understand multiple possibilities wherein the mother would not want to bring that child to term. Yeah, that's one where I would say leave it up to the mother, for sure. And now that I have all that wrapped up, like, with that kind of as the backdrop and the mindset that I'm going into this with, the way things currently stand and what would be the immediate results of overturning Roe v. Wade, I don't think it's the right move right now. Reasons being, number one, overturning Roe v. Wade would not end abortion. Any of you Christians out there who think that merely overturning Roe v. Wade would end abortion, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Actually, that's more of a sorry, not sorry. I'll just be the bearer of bad news here. You're wrong. You are misinformed. Or just have a misunderstanding. It would not completely ban abortion for the entire country. What it would do is leave it up to the states. And there is essentially a mixed bag of states that would then have bans on abortion or protections for abortion or somewhere in between. So essentially, with overturning Roe v. Wade, you would not be ending abortion for the country. You would be ending it for some people and not for others. And how is that fair? Essentially leaving access for that possibility to some people and not to others, just because of where they live. No, I'm sorry, that just does not sit well in my mind. Also, it's just, okay, this is a bit of speculation on my part, but I think it's a fair enough assumption. A lot of the states that already have protections for abortions are probably the ones where abortions are done for what are currently the flimsiest of reasons. So, if that's why you're trying to get rid of abortion, to disallow those flimsy reasons for it, you're not even accomplishing that. Like, California has protections on abortion, even if Roe v. Wade is overturned. So, with California being one of the most liberal states, if not the most liberal state in the U.S., you're not really getting anything there. To my Christian friends out there, or any of my fellow Christians out there, if you want Roe v. Wade overturned because you want abortion abolished, right now, that's not what it's going to do. All it's going to do is leave it up to the states and further complicate some already muddy waters on this issue. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. So, other things that could happen as a result, this is where the whole idea of you're not really banning abortion, you're only banning safe abortions idea possibly comes into play. Since, since doctors at, hospitals and places like that would be required to report any such abortion-like procedures, they're not going to be the ones to do it unless they want to lose their jobs. It would be done at places that aren't hospitals and maybe have their own rules written such that, they don't feel the need to report abortions being done. But are they really going to be up to snuff compared with the actual hospitals? Questionable. And if it's strict enough, you might get people just doing, totally ridiculous forms of abortions just wherever. People who may or may not even have any sort of medical training and, would basically be looking up how to do it on Google or something like that. I don't think that's what we want. But if the desire to get an abortion would be strong enough and people would be willing to skirt the law on that matter, that's what we would end up with. But I brought up the phrase abortion-like procedures as I mentioned that. And that's where another major rub comes in with abolishing or with overturning Roe v. Wade and the idea and the current moves people are making to try and abolish abortion. There are some states that have their laws written such that not just abortions as I defined them earlier would be banned, and not it would essentially ban all abortion-like procedures as those laws are written, at least to my understanding. Therefore, there's a possibility that some of those instances that I mentioned earlier I would not even consider abortions, some of those may be outlawed because of this legislation. And some of those, I think, kind of agreeable medical exceptions would be ruled out or would be also banned because of the way that these laws are written. And I don't think that's really a fair, situation. I think that is an overly restrictive view and legal standpoint on abortion. So those are some of the main reasons why I think even just at this moment, overturning Roe v. Wade is not the way to go. never mind the whole, like, we'd essentially be causing so many more problems for so many more people and increasing the difficulty of so many lives because of this. Like, if we're going to essentially force more births to happen, we got to add more support in there to allow those to not be an undue burden, essentially. Because if we don't bring in that support and all that kind of stuff, then suddenly monetary situations become so much more of a factor, as well as just living space arrangements become so much more of a factor. Because guess what? Now you have no choice whether you want this abortion to happen or not. Also, does birth control count as an abortion? There are laws within the Bible, if we're taking the Christian standpoint here. There are Levitical laws that most of us Christians no longer really hold to, but there are Levitical laws that say, a man should not engage in his part of the baby making and then, kind of turn back on that at the last second. That's about as PG as I could possibly put that. So, like, and the reason for that was that, the Jewish view of the time, and I guess God's view by proxy, or really God's view as imparted to his people at the time, was that, that essence from the male was in and of itself a form of, life-giving, and thus should not be wasted. That's really about the best way I could put that, I think. That's, that explains it enough while also being semi-PG or PG-13 maybe. But anyway, so if we're going into the whole idea of, not wasting potential life, does birth control count as abortion? Or any other measures that are typically used to prevent a woman getting pregnant in the first place? And yes, I realize there's the whole idea for Christians of, we need to be more moral on that end of it in the first place, and then these things wouldn't happen. Okay, but at what point are we crossing the line of forcing our own Christian morality upon others? I got ragged on by some fellow Christians for, saying I thought Elon Musk could have done better things than, buy Twitter with its $46 billion, and stating that I wasn't really happy with it. I had people telling me then, oh, he's not a Christian. Why are you trying to force a Christian standard on him? Okay, why should we try and force a Christian standard of morality when it comes to pregnancies and abortion and that kind of stuff? Like, inconsistent much? So, if we're not getting that far into it, then, okay, so abortion is only once the pregnancy has already begun, but, like, what? Where's the cutoff point? Again, this is complicating something that is already muddy waters and confusing territory. So, overturning Roe v. Wade. Not sure it's a good idea right now. Unless we can further bring some clarity to this issue and or, bring in more support for various aspects of this whole thing. And that doesn't even get into other possible legislation and the potential slippery slope that could be created by, like, long term by overturning Roe v. Wade. Because that was a precedent for certain other Supreme Court rulings. So if that gets overturned, do those other ones get overturned? And another thing, I think this is really the final factor I will mention when it comes to me thinking overturning Roe v. Wade is a bad idea. Part of what brought the Supreme Court to rule the way they did in the case of Roe v. Wade and essentially allow a legal right to abortion was basically it had to do with privacy. Because how in the world are you going to try to enforce a ban on abortion without having some invasion of privacy? If you ask the doctors, enforce the doctors, essentially, to tell you if a woman's trying to have an abortion, then that there's normal medical privacy laws in place that now becomes an exception for, because it's for privacy reasons that the doctors and hospital aren't supposed to be giving out your medical information unless you authorize it. Okay, let's say you try to enforce it a different way. Actually, you know what? Any other method of trying to enforce abortion is just an even further invasion of privacy. Again, going back to kind of generalizing this, when it comes to, Supreme Court rulings, there were other privacy-related Supreme Court rulings that stemmed off of the ruling in Roe v. Wade. So, not only could we possibly be giving up rights to privacy in those cases, in cases of abortion, but other people could end up being denied further freedoms because of other rulings that stemmed from that. So, yeah, potentially dangerous domino effect with that I don't think is really great either, if you think about it very long. So, anyway, yeah, I think that about wraps up my thoughts. So again, general summary, even though I gave one at the beginning, I personally don't think abortion is, as a general rule, a good moral choice. If there are some reasonable exceptions, then fine. I am okay with people choosing those. And I do not want people to lose the right to choose those. But even from the standpoint of not wanting to force Christian morals upon non-Christians, which are, believe it or not, the majority within the United States, then I don't think this, we have literally no other ground to stand on when it comes to this, other than the moral argument of it. And there are so many other freedoms that could be lost, and so many other complicating factors that essentially mean overturning Roe v. Wade is kind of a bad idea. So, anyway, that's all I've got for you. I know this was sort of long-winded for just a topic-based I don't know if you'd call it a rant per se, but just me giving my thoughts on the matter. If you watch the entire thing, thank you a lot. I don't expect most of you to do that. But if you did, great. Love it. Or even if you watched part of the video, thanks for stopping by and at least, hearing a little bit of what I have to say. If you have any further thoughts, leave some comments, but let's have it be A, civil, and B, more nuanced than just the, one side saying abortion is bad and the other side saying, no, you're monsters, we have to allow for abortion for privacy reasons. Or whatever. Yeah. I want actual reasonable discussion going on here, not just chatting party lines at each other. Anyway, and of course, otherwise, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, click the bell, all that good stuff. Just look down in the description for info on how to follow my stuff here and my other social media pages and all that. So anyway, that's it for now. I hope at least maybe with the summaries, I gave a concise enough, view of, or a concise enough, communication of what my thoughts are to not bore you. But if you really wanted to know the details, I figured I'd also give those, because nuance in the discussion is what massively seems to be lacking, at least on the internet, when it comes to this topic. So, anyway, that's it. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you for the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.